Guys, welcome to the show. This is going to be a different episode. Christian Babcock with the Hunter's Advantage podcast about a month ago or so interviewed me for his podcast, the Hunter's Advantage podcast, and sent me the audio. So this is the audio from that podcast. We talk everything from elk to turkeys to guiding to all different types of things. Hopefully you'll get some value out of it. I also want to remind you guys before we get into this episode, I want to remind you about the Go Hunt Gear Shop giveaway, the $1,000. You guys have a chance to win a $1,000 gift card. All you have to do is order online, gohunt.com, go to the gear shop, order online. Every dollar you spend, you're going to get an entry into the drawing. Now, this drawing is only for the month of June, and it's the 17th today, so there's only 13 days left in this drawing. All you have to do is order anything, buy anything from the Go Hunt Gear Shop. You're going to be matched dollar for dollar for your entry. So you spend $1, you're going to get an entry. If you spend $1,000, you're going to get 1,000 entries. And that's to win a $1,000 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card. I'm going to be announcing the winner at the end of the month. And I want to thank GoHunt.com for their sponsorship of this podcast. You can also call Cody Nelson at 702-847-8747, extension 2. Tell him you want to be a part of the J. Scott Go Hunt Gear Shop giveaway. Tell him that you're interested in optics, binos, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, rangefinders, tripods, trekking poles, outdoor tools and knives, watches, game calls, hiking gear, backpacking gear, etc. They have a ton of that there at the Go Hunt Gear Shop. So 2 ways to enter. Either go to gohunt.com, go to the gear shop, just order online. There'll be a place where you can enter the promo code JScott19, or you can call Cody Nelson, 702-847-8747, extension 2. Tell him you want to be part of the JScott19 promo code and entered into the drawing. Also want to thank Kuiu. That's Kuiu, Kuiu Ultralight Hunting. If you guys have any need for great gear, go to kuiu.com. That's kuiu.com. That's all the gear that I wear on my hunts. I wear it on all my fishing. Actually, that's all I wear every day, hiking, doing all the stuff I do in Colorado. I wear Kuiu gear all the time. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. I also want to thank phonescope.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount. CanyonCoolers.com, based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. If you guys need a great cooler, use the JScott19 promo code and you're going to get a 10% discount. I also want to thank onxmaps.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 20% discount there at onxmaps. So, guys, thanks for your avid support of this podcast. You can send me direct messages on my Instagram account. That's at JScottOutdoors. You can also send me an email, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And I appreciate all the support, appreciate all the messages, emails, direct messages, and just trying to provide value to you guys. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. Let's get right to the show.
The podcast. I'm joined by Jay Scott. So Jay, why don't you just start out by introducing yourself to the listeners and maybe give us a little brief description of what you do.
Yeah, sounds good, Christian. I have been a professional hunting guide in the state of Arizona and kind of the Southwest for probably since 1997, so that puts me at 22 years. I reside in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to school at Arizona State. I grew up in Arizona. I guide for elk, bighorn sheep, Gould's turkey, Coots Deer, a bunch of different animals in Arizona. I also have a guiding operation in Sonora, Mexico, where we do Coots Deer hunts and Gould's turkey hunts. I've been doing that since 1997 as well. Just finished my 21st season down in Mexico, chasing Coots Deer during the rut in January. And then in the fall, as of a couple of years ago, I actually don't guide elk hunters in Arizona much anymore. I spend most of my time from September 1st to mid-November in Colorado at the Ot6 Ranch, where I'm the hunt manager. It's a private ranch owned by a family, and we don't do any public hunts, just hunts for the family.
Okay, that's awesome. Sounds like you stay pretty busy with it all then.
Yeah, and I've got my podcast. I started J Scott Outdoors podcast in February of 2015, and just started from scratch. And I think I'm 567 episodes in. I've had over 25 million downloads, and it's been a huge success. And it's takes up a lot of my time, but I enjoy it.
Maybe we could start out by talking about your Gould's turkey season. I that was so interesting to keep up with on your Instagram. It seemed like you guys were having a lot of fun down there. I'm used to just hunting Rios, and like it just seemed like you guys had like a plethora of birds you guys were hunting down there.
Well, the reality is you guys in Texas and Oklahoma probably have more birds when it comes to numbers, but the properties we hunt are completely private, and we are the only people that hunt them. So most of our setups that we have on the birds, we are pretty efficient with, the videoing and the calling and getting the birds to come in and having a successful hunt. They don't get any pressure at all. Nobody calls at them all year long until we show up. So, when the word dumb turkey comes up, these turkeys are definitely on the not as bright side, which I'll take any dumb turkey all day long. They love to strut. They love to gobble. I've been guiding Gould's turkey hunters full time since 2010, and I think we took over 60 birds this year on 15 different properties, and just had a ball. Yeah,
That's awesome. So what have you hunted a lot of Rios or Easterns?
I've never hunted Easterns at all. I have hunted Merriam's a lot. I've hunted Rios in Texas and in California, and I had not gotten the Osceola in Florida, and I have not gotten the Eastern, but I've turkey hunted probably for the last 20 some years extensively all spring, and I consider myself somewhat of a turkey nut for sure.
Yeah. So what would you say the main differences are, going south of the border hunting a Gould's versus a Merriam or a Rio?
Well, when you take the birds themselves, the Goulds stand taller. They also have 20 primary feathers where most birds have 19, so they have one extra primary feather. I believe the primary feathers to be on most birds are probably 5 inches longer than the Rio Grande turkey. They're probably 3 to 4 inches longer than the Merriams. They love to come in full strut. They have all the hunters that come hunt with me all say it's the biggest track they've ever seen. So, their feet are big. They stand tall. Most birds only weigh between 20 and 22 pounds. But they're a real showy bird. They're pretty easy to call in, and you can call in whole flocks of birds where like hunting a Rio or a Merriam. Sometimes when they get henned up, they can get pretty tough. Goulds typically, in general, are a real user-friendly bird, and that's why I like to hunt them. Most people that come hunt with me, they're trying to complete their Royal or their World Slam. So you've got the Rio Grande, the Osceola, the Eastern, the Merriams, and then you add the Goulds to that. That's the Royal Slam, and then a lot of people have already gone down and gotten the Oscillated, which is the 6th turkey, making the World Slam. So most everybody that comes out to hunt with us want to either complete their Royal Slam or their World Slam.
So are a lot of your clients wanting to come, and is this like a semi-guided thing, fully guided?
It's fully guided. Yeah, we do most all of the calling, and they come. Most of them, like I said, just come and they want to check that bird off the list. Because of its proximity or where it is in Mexico, the birds cost me more. If I told you what I paid for birds, it'd blow your mind. So that, the hunt isn't cheap. And they're coming quite a ways to come get the birds. So it's a lot of times it's more just coming to get the Gould's turkey to complete the Royal or the World Slam. It's not just to come on a turkey hunt. Although I do have some people that, most everybody that leaves our turkey hunt say it's the best turkey hunt they've ever been on. And a lot of that is just because the birds never get called. And if you watch any of the videos on my website or on my Instagram, you'll see they're just unbelievable birds.
Now, did you guys, I think it was you that said something about, what's your success rate on a Gould's turkey hunt?
Well, we've had 100% success rate up until this year. We actually had a couple guys this year that did not get their birds, which just breaks my heart. I will say that everyone that hunted, well, I shouldn't even go there. we had a couple guys that didn't get birds, so that's we broke our streak finally since 2010.
Oh, wow. So I'm really interested in talking about kind of this Arizona draw system that you guys have. I have a buddy that is I don't know if you've heard of Corey Guide Services, but yeah.
Shane Corey, I've known him for 25 years.
Yeah, so a guy that I actually met this last semester named Ian Crow used to guide out there, and he was telling me about how Arizona elk is just like a once in a lifetime kind of hunt. And so I'm just wondering, what advice would you give to someone who's not a Western hunter that's trying to get in there and hunt an Arizona elk? What should we be doing to prepare for, an archery hunt or something like that?
Well, you definitely need to be applying. So up until a couple years ago, you actually had to have the maximum amount of points in order to draw that unit. A couple years ago, they changed it where someone like you with no points actually has a mathematical chance to draw. It's not a great chance, but they give 5% of the tags to people with the most bonus points, and 5% of the tags, excuse me, 5% of the tags to people with the most bonus points in that unit. So up until a couple years ago, you had to have the most points, let's say 15 or 18 or 22 points, whatever, for that specific unit. You had to be, as a non-resident, you had to be at the top of that bracket. Whereas now, half the tags go to people in the random pool. So, I would say you have to apply. You can't draw if you don't apply. You've got states like New Mexico where they don't have a bonus point system. That's also a great option. It's straight across the board. The odds aren't great, but there's no bonus point system. You could draw every year in a row, or you could go 5 years and not draw at all.
Mm-hmm. So for someone that's, not used to hunting, out Western things like elk or antelope and stuff like that. And I've started to dip my feet into that. I went antelope hunting this year and I really, really enjoyed it. And so it kind of got me into this, I want to spot and stock stuff. I want to do, go hunt in the mountains and stuff like that. So how can someone that's used to whitetail hunting and, kind of hunting in one spot and just relaxing and, waiting in a tree stand, what do they need to be doing to prepare for a hunt like that, as far as like terrain goes, or conditioning, or shooting their bow, or running, or what do you think?
Well, yeah, all of that is good. I think the big thing you have to understand is our country's big. It's open. You got to be able to move. You got to be able to glass, cover country. It's a true spot and stock hunt. Most hunts in the West are, rather than a sit and wait type style, most of our hunts are, using your binoculars mounted on a tripod, up on a high ridge, glassing long distances as far as you can see. Trying to find the group of elk or the group of mule deer or antelope or whatever you're after, and then trying to figure out how you're going to move in closer to the animal and get yourself into a position where you can get a shot. So with that plays, being good at long range shooting, being able to shoot as far as you can comfortably, obviously in the best shape that you can. So those are all huge things. If you're talking about bow hunting, obviously the same thing, being able to shoot very well. The further you can shoot, the better your opportunity is. Having good conditioning, having good equipment that allows you to be in the field all the time. When conditions get hot, when conditions get cold, being able to, use a layering system where you can kind of transition from, in the mornings, it could be, 25 degrees and it could be 70 degrees at noon. So you have to be able to regulate your temperature, so gear, conditioning, shooting prowess, and then glassing ability are all things that if you're going to come hunt out west, you should work on.
Now, I had Jimmy Hamilton from Vortex Optics on the podcast, and he was kind of telling me a little bit about how important optics are, especially hunting out west. Like how important has that been to you and your success?
It's paramount. It's everything. I believe in buying the best optics that you can afford. I believe in mounting those on a tripod. We hunt Coots Deer, which is, a mature Coots Deer is going to weigh 100 to 110 pounds. Yeah. So they're a very small animal. They live in brushy country. We sit in, 4, 5, 6 hours in one spot up on a high knob. We may see one buck. We may see 15 bucks. But we spend a lot of time behind binoculars. The more time you spend behind binoculars, the better you're going to get at it. And I would tell you that the only way to really get good at it is to do it. And, guys show up and they're just trying to handhold and look in big country. It doesn't work. You've got to be able to sit stationary either in a chair or on your butt on a pad, put your binoculars, mount them on a tripod, and be able to sit comfortably for hours and just let your eyes do the walking, be able to grid the country, be able to, kind of quick scan the country. Then once you find a buck, then trying to determine if that's a buck that you want to shoot. That's the next thing is trying to evaluate with a spotting scope and see if that's a buck that you want to move in closer, and if it's something you need to take a better look at. So having a great spotting scope is huge. I actually glass with 25 by 55 power, or excuse me, 25 by 50 power dual spotting scopes mounted on a tripod. So, and I've used the Koa, the 32 power long range Koa. I've used the Doctor optics that were, 40 power fixed. But being able to glass long distances, anybody coming out west, whether they're using a 10, 12, or 15 power, or even some of the big binoculars, being able to just sit up high and look for long periods of time are going to allow you to see more game and be more effective.
Now, are you a Sitka or is it a Kuyu? Is that how you say it? Which one of those are you?
Yeah, so I've been with Kuyu since 2010. Was really dear friends with the founder who just passed away in September, Jason Hairston. I'm a big believer in their gear. He actually also started Sitka, and in, I believe, the end of 2009, got bought out and parted ways with Jonathan Hart and the guys at Sitka. And then he started Kuyu. And so I was actually with Sitka right before Jason left, and then I hopped on with Kuyu since the beginning. And they make great products, and I use them on all my hunts.
That's awesome. So kind of you had said you had been a guide full time since 1999. Is that right?
Since '97, I still have my Arizona guides license, and I guided for 20 years for elk in Arizona. I still guide for desert bighorn sheep in Arizona. My focus primarily for guiding is Coots Deer in Mexico, Gould's turkey in Mexico. The Coots Deer hunts take place in December and January, primarily in January during the peak of the rut. We try and hunt those 3 weeks right during the peak of the rut. And then the Gould's turkey is in April and a little bit in May. And then my elk, the last 2 years, my elk time has been spent on the Ot6 Ranch in south central Colorado, where we have about 1,000 head of free-ranging elk that kind of live on the property and move throughout the property, on and off the property. And it's a beautiful property. It's got black bear and turkeys and mountain lion and mule deer and elk. So we run a string of about 150 trail cameras on the property. And me and Hunter Meekum, who works with me, we basically spend about 75 days in the fall every day glassing and taking inventory of the elk on the property, watch them, from right when they're rubbing their velvet all the way through the rut and even after the rut. So it's basically monitor elk for about 75 days, and it's a riot.
That's awesome. So I think I'm planning on going on an over-the-counter archery hunt in Colorado this year. So I know you say that you're scouting and glassing on a piece of property that you already know of. What advice would you give to me if I was going to try to go to a unit that I didn't know? What can I do beforehand to look at that as far as e-scouting goes and stuff like that? Terrain, how are they going to be acting in September?
Well, the first thing I would tell you is I don't know if you're familiar with Onyx Maps, but if you go to onyxmaps.com, get a membership there, and take the unit that you're hunting or the area that you're hunting and save those maps offline, basically cache those maps. So when you get there, you will have full aerial and topo coverage. Not only that, you'll also have private and public property boundaries. So if you're hunting a piece of private or if you're hunting a piece of public, you'll know exactly where you stand. There's a little blue dot and it will show you exactly where you're at. So if you know if you're getting close to a neighbor's fence line or what have you, that's first and foremost. Then I would get also on the onX Maps desktop, you can go on and plot points. You can plot roads. You can basically do all your research, as well as I like to go on Google Earth and do all my scouting. And you can export from Google Earth onto onX Maps. And so when I show up in a unit, either that I've been to or never been to, I have all the roads in there. I have all the water sources. I have all of the trails. In talking with people that have hunted the units before, I have areas where, circled where they suggest. I have, X marks the spot on a, water hole or a wallow or what have you. Depending on when you're coming, if you're coming during the over-the-counter archery season, Colorado is one of those that the opportunity is great. The success is not too good. Typically, a lot of times you have to get way back in, away from the roads. And then sometimes there'll be elk right by the trailheads and everybody's walking past them. I would highly recommend to backpack and go as deep and as far as you can go. I would recommend going in an area where you can get up on some either above timberline ridges or areas where you can glass across a canyon and be able to use your eyes and spot the elk. And then be able to move in closer to them and, interact with them, whether they're, bugling really well, or if you find a good wallow or a water hole or a trail or something that you can sit. But it's one of those things you're going to have to kind of cut your teeth on. You're going to have to kind of learn by trial and error. I would try and talk to as many people as you can that have hunted the specific area. I would then take it a step further and I would try and talk to anybody from the Forest Service, anybody from the Game and Fish. Basically try and gather as much intel as you can, find out where people are going to be hunting the most, where the most pressure is, find out some of those pockets where, guys say, man, if you can really get into this basin or this canyon, you're probably going to have it to yourself. And the other thing is I would try and pick and go at the ideal time. I think a lot of people go when the elk necessarily aren't really rutting as good. So try and pick those dates kind of mid, like September 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere starting in there. I believe the season starts the last Saturday in August and goes to about the 25th or so of September. Typically that 7th through the end of the season is the best bugling. So that's some of the advice that I would give you. But plan on staying back in there. Try and go ultralight and try and cover as much country as you can. Don't be surprised if you pull up at a trailhead and there's 15 rigs parked there. That's just the nature of hunting Colorado. So do your homework and try and find some of those areas that, maybe some guys say if you work really hard, you can get into the backcountry and not have as much people pressure as you would, not want to see.
So how crucial would you say being able to call, whether it's bugling or cow calling, would be to the success of a hunt like that?
Well, I think it's a huge part of it. I don't think you have to be able to call to kill elk. I think there's a lot of people that kill elk that don't call, and I think there's a lot of people that shouldn't call that could kill more elk if they didn't call. I think the lure of wanting to call elk and wanting to have the experience of the bull, bugling down your throat and down your neck and coming at you charging, is probably, for a first timer, is probably not going to be too likely. I would tell you there's some great call companies out there. There's some great videos. There's some great instructional videos. And I would listen to Steve Chappell's stuff. He makes some great stuff. Jason Phelps makes some great stuff. Carlton, it's now called Native, out of Colorado. They make some great stuff. There's a lot of really good companies out there, but the reality is most people probably call too much and they actually kill their chances. So I'd be realistic with how you call, and try and be self-aware of how good you are, and how maybe you should clam it up and just sneak in. If they're already bugling, if they're already going, I don't try and call very much at all. I try and get close to them and evaluate them. I think bugling is very overrated. I don't see guys that are beginning buglers bugling bulls in, coming in charging. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
You take a guy like Corey Jacobson or Dirk Durham, or Steve Chappell, or Joel Turner, or some of these guys that are Bo Brooks, that are phenomenal buglers. I think their success of bugling bulls in is a lot higher. I think if you want to be good at something, in my opinion, I'd be a better cow caller than bugler. I think too much emphasis gets placed on bugling, and I think it kills a lot of guys' hunts, to be honest with you. If you look at the nature of the call itself, the cow call is a much shorter call, whereas a bugle, is a 10-second call, and most human ears can listen and go, oh, that's a hunter over there, that's fake. Where if a guy just blows a short, cow call, and it's a very short, half a second to 1 second call, a lot of times that will fool humans, and of course it'll fool the elk, what we're trying to do. So that's just a little bit of advice there.
That's funny that you say that about Steve Chappell. I'm going to have him on the podcast, I think, in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully I can learn something from him too.
Yeah, so Steve and I have been friends since 1996, and we used to actually be partners in the guide service together. It was Chappell and Scott Guide Service for probably, 7, 8, 9 years. He's still a dear friend of mine. He is the best elk caller I've ever heard. I always tell him if he would enter the World Championships, he would win hands down. He's phenomenal at bugling. He's phenomenal at cow calling. I've spent lots and lots of time with Steve. We're still great friends today. He makes great calls, designs great calls. He's got some great YouTube videos, and I'm a firm believer in if you can mimic his sounds and do it exactly how he does it, you're going to have a lot more success. He's a real humble guy. I'm glad you're going to have him on the podcast. He does a really good job.
That's awesome. So would you say that I've heard from people that obviously haven't hunted elk before that elk and turkey are similar in the fact that they are more vocal animals than most that we hunt. But would you compare using a cow call, kind of like a turkey call, how a lot of turkey hunters run their hunt by calling too much? And you know how when you're calling turkey, you can be really, really soft with it, and you can kind of get that bird really inquisitive, and that gets him more curious, and sometimes he'll come in silently. Have you seen that play out in the elk woods before?
Yeah, for sure. But I think the most important thing, whether you're turkey calling or elk calling, is you sound authentic, you sound real, you have the right tonal quality. If you sound good, you can't overcall. If you sound bad, you can overcall very quickly. So, you take a guy like myself, or you take a Steve Chappell, or someone that calls very well. I don't think we can really overcall too much because our sounds are good and authentic. If you've got something where your buddies, just take it for instance, if your buddy's working on his cow calling or his bugling, and you listen to it with your own ears, and you're like, yeah, it's good, but it's just not. I can tell it's a human. If you can tell it's a human, an elk can tell it's a human like that. So that's a good rule of thumb. You have to be self-aware of how good your sounds are. But I've also seen on the other where people are so afraid to blow a call that they're so passive that, I've seen guys with turkey calls where they're just this, and I'm like, the bird doesn't even hear that. Like, yeah, every once in a while you're going to get a bird that hears that and he wants to come in and check it out. I like to say call with confidence. I just think a lot of people need to practice a lot more and be a lot more self-aware of how good they actually are. But if you make good sounds, I say go for it, and call call. I've got lots of buddies that they're like, I'm just going to call till I get one to play my game. I would rather have one come in screaming than shoot one that's not. So, I mean, there's a million ways to kill an elk. It's just what you're looking for. But, start by checking out Steve Chappell's sounds and, row hunting resources. Chris Rowe does an amazing job, talking about when to call, why to call, the different sounds to make and what have you, and learning, elk behavior. So that's a whole nother aspect of it. You can have great sounds and be calling at the wrong time. Timing, whether in any animal you're calling, whether it's coyotes, whatever it is, turkeys, elk, timing a lot of it and mixed with good sounds and good timing can have good results quickly.
What would your advice be, or how? I know you just said there was a million ways to kill an elk, but how would you do it if you had brought no calls to the woods for someone that is absolutely beginning? Is it just like, hey, I'm going to try to cut him off exactly where he wants to be? I see kind of how I know it's going to depend on 1,000 situational things, but how do you do that for someone that's not really familiar with spot and stalking?
Yeah, so for one, like I said, I'd use my binoculars and try and figure out and pattern what they're doing. I might spend a couple days watching them morning and night, watch where they come into the meadows, come out of the timber, watch which elk come first. Is it the small raghorn bulls and a few cows? Do the cows come first and then a big bull comes? They come out in the same corner of the meadow or the open park morning and night, and they exit the same way. And then I would try and figure out, okay, how can I get in position there with the wind right? Because the wind is the number one most important factor. How do I get into position to be able to ambush them to get a shot? That is the most effective way, in my opinion, is to monitor them and figure out what they're doing before you just scramble in there and try and make it happen. Unfortunately, a lot of guys only have a handful of days to hunt, so they can't sit there for 2 days in a row and learn their pattern. If you can, learn their pattern, figure out what they're doing, be patient, and then slip in like a predator, because you only need one good experience to get close enough to shoot. A lot of guys, they want to be close to the elk all of the time, and the reality is they're going to smell you, they're going to see you, they're going to hear you, they're going to pick you off. But if you can act like a predator and say, I just need one good chance at this bull or this cow, and my first chance is going to be my best opportunity, then plan accordingly. If you don't have the time for that, sitting water, if it's hot and dry and you find a wallow, you find where they're, fresh wallowing and they're kicking mud everywhere, you might build yourself a tree stand, get up in a tree. You might, that's probably better than a ground blind or building a natural ground blind. Get up in the air, sit up on a big limb and get your scent up off the ground. And if it's hot and dry, they're going to come to those wallows. If you find a fresh wallow, if you're hunting in more arid country where there's dirt water tanks, like in Arizona, New Mexico, find where those elk are watering, and if you can get there, either cut them off to and from the water or sit on the water. That's a extremely effective and efficient way to kill an elk for sure. If you come with no calls at all, I think you can do very well if they're bugling, if they're making some noise. If two bulls are bugling back and forth at each other, just slip in there and just keep moving, keep the wind right, and just move in till you're within range. And it's going to take a little bit of practice to be around elk and, close to elk as much as you can. And you're going to learn when you can move and when you can't. They're going to smell you and hear you way quicker than they're going to see you. If you're hunting over-the-counter elk in Colorado, those cows, they're all pretty keen on people. So you're going to have your game face on, but, it's trial and error.
So I was looking at your profile and I listened to your podcast about the Bighorn Draw today. So what is that like? I've always had a aspiration to kill, a sheep. And it just looks like you guys have some really, really good ones out in Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona has unbelievable desert bighorn sheep hunting, and Rocky Mountains for that matter. We had, I think, 111 tags last year, and 30%. I think there was 33 record book bighorn shot over 168. It is a draw just like the elk. You can draw with not many points or any points, but the more points you have, definitely the better chance you have. Because it's a draw, we have phenomenal quality. We have some really big rams, and most all of the units in Arizona are pretty darn good when you start comparing them to other states. The only other state that Nevada has good desert bighorn hunting, and California has good desert bighorn hunting, and New Mexico has some big rams, but they don't have a ton of sheep. But it's the draw is coming up. I believe it's June 11th. You just need to get in the draw. You spend I think it's $170 for your non-resident hunting license, and that's going to cover your elk, that's going to cover your deer, that's going to cover the sheep, all of the species. Not to mention, you can come out and hunt, with that license that you've already purchased. In order to get a bonus point, you have to purchase that license. So you might as well come out and hunt archery deer over the counter and use that license that you've paid for. A lot of guys have been putting in for 15, 20 years, and they come out, and then some people just blow the $170 and never even come out. But you have to apply. You cannot draw if you don't apply. So you have to apply if you're serious about wanting to kill a sheep. And then the other thing is, like I talked about, we did a 2-hour podcast 2 episodes ago on the whole draw process, and we went through each unit in the state. We went through the animals that have been shot the last 5 years in each unit. We went through the tag allotments and kind of gave unit by unit breakdowns. You want to pick, as a non-resident, bighorn units with 2 or more tags, because 1 tag units only go to residents, and there's hundreds of non-residents that waste their points waste their pick every single year because they're applying in a 1 tag unit that isn't even available for a non-resident. So as a non-resident, you've got to pick 2 tag units and more, and there's a handful of them. Again, the odds aren't great, but you can draw on your very first year. The other thing is, you need to make sure you stay away from 2 or 3 or 4 of the best units in the state, because those will always go to the max point pool, and mathematically you won't even ever have a chance to draw. So I talk about on the podcast some of the middle tier units that give you a chance to draw, that don't go in the max point pool. And I mean, every year someone draws with 0 or 1 or 2 points. I took a 12-year-old girl 4 or 5 years ago. She had 2 bonus points, and she drew one of the best units in the state.
Wow, that's incredible. So you were saying that if you do lose that money on your non-resident license if you don't go out and hunt. And
you lose it regardless. It's basically right. $170, and that's a part. You pay to play, and that's part of the pay to get into the draw. And I think it's $13 for every, whether it's elk, deer, buffalo, turkey, javelina. It's $13 per species from there. To actually apply. And you can draw some great deer tags, some javelina tags, some turkey tags, and actually some antlerless cow elk tags. Even as a non-resident, with 2 or 3 points, you can draw an archery elk hunt in Arizona to hunt bulls. And I cover all this on my podcast. Obviously, the bighorn and deer draw is coming up June 11th. And I cover all of the draws in multiple podcast episodes. And then in February, the elk and antelope draw we cover every unit as well, and go through and break down the odds and what have you.
So could you do an over-the-counter archery mule deer if you bought that license?
Yeah, so you can hunt Coots Deer or mule deer. You can hunt in August, December, or January. And so that's what I'm saying a lot. And you can come out and quail hunt. So with that license that you purchased to apply for some of the big game hunts, you might as well come out and do a mule deer over the counter. And the thing is, you hunt them in January. You hunt them when the deer are rutting. Our desert deer rut in the month of January, and so you're hunting them literally in the peak of the rut. And it's something I highly recommend.
So what got you interested in guiding for Coots Deer? That's something I really didn't have a firm grasp on even really existed until, I don't know, a few years ago. So what's the scoop on the Coots Deer, and why do you like chasing those?
Well, it's a real spot and stock animal. They're a very wary animal. They're a small deer. They're a beautiful deer, dainty, just elegant deer. But I like chasing big Coots deer. Big Coots deer, we've shot bucks, in the 130, 140 inch range. We've got, the Boone and Crockett minimum is 110 inches for a typical, 120 for non-typical. Every year in Mexico, we're killing deer, or our hunters are killing deer from 100 inches all the way up to, 130, 140 inches. A couple years ago, we had a 141 inch deer get killed. We've had, multiple 130, 120 inch deer. So I became fascinated with Coots deer, 25 years ago. It's one of those things, if you're probably into Texas whitetail or Oklahoma whitetail. I think it's geographic. If you live, there's people in the Northwest that are into blacktail hunting, and that's, there's dyed-in-the-wool blacktail hunters. Mm-hmm. And you got guys that are waterfowl hunters. But Coots deer, for me, it's the ultimate spot and stock animal. They're extremely wary and challenging. And we like to shoot them with rifles. We like to shoot them between 300 and 500 yards. We like to target big deer, record book deer, Boone and Crockett deer, and we that's a passion of mine and my partners. We just love big deer. It's no different than mule deer or whitetail or anything else. Typically the bigger the deer gets, the more excited we get, and we're fortunate that Arizona and Mexico have, phenomenal Coots deer hunting, and so it's just great glassing, great time of year to be out in the woods.
So do you have a lot of people that want to bow hunt them?
I don't focus on bow hunting Coots deer at all. I think it's a really inefficient way to kill a deer. They're so wary and so hard to kill with a bow. From a guiding perspective, it's just not cost efficient for me to run bow hunts. There are guys that do it. I prefer to chase big deer with my binoculars and shoot them with a rifle. They're hard enough to kill as it is. Yeah. I get a lot of people that say they want to come bow hunt, and I just say call somebody else. We focus on spot and stock rifle Coots deer hunting for big deer, and that's kind of our specialty.
So how did you get started in outfitting? What made you want to pursue that as a career?
I just wanted to hunt more, and the way Arizona's system is, it's hard to draw tags, and so our elk hunting was so good. I thought, well, geez, if I become a guide, that will give me an opportunity to be in the woods, for a longer period of time and quote unquote justify it. I literally spent 20 Septembers in a row taking the full entire month off. You hear guys talk about, I went elk hunting. I would take literally the last couple days of August, and I would not come back till the first week of October. And I spent 20 years in a row monitoring, chasing, guiding, videoing, photographing elk during the rut in Arizona. And, after I did it the first year, that's all I wanted to do was be in the elk woods in September. So my main business is real estate business. That's what allows me to do all the things that I've done. Obviously, outfitting, the podcast, passive income through real estate is what allows me to do the things that I love. But I always tell people, even if I didn't have real estate, I'd still chase elk for 30 days in September. Just like I want to be in the turkey woods, the month of April, just like I want to be in the Coots deer woods, the month of January. So, and then, fish in the summer. So, whether I've been financially successful or not, I'm going to find a way to make it happen because I love to hunt and fish.
So I assume you started out guiding for some other company or person. And what did that progression look like going from working for someone else to opening up your own guide service?
Yeah, in Arizona, we're kind of unique because it's not like Colorado or Idaho or some of these states where you have to have a concession and you only have one outfitter in that concession. Arizona's, pretty much the Wild West. All you got to do is go down and take a quiz, basically. You pay at the time $100 to get your hunting and fishing guides license, and you're a legal guide. So
Wow.
I did work the first season for a guy and took out a couple different hunters and said, I just want to do this on my own. And so I've been doing it on my own. I partnered up, like I said, with Steve Chappell for a handful of years, and my partner since then, and with Steve actually, is Dar Colburn and Scott Outfitters. So, we've just been, we can guide for any animal in the state. And with that hunting license or hunting guides license, you can basically guide for anything in the state.
That's awesome. So do you have a lot of people that aren't really qualified to be guides since it's so easy to get that license?
Well, I mean, it's easy for me, doing it as long as I've done it, to point fingers and say there's people that aren't qualified. But I think that's kind of a loaded question, because I think everybody starts at a certain level. I think there's certainly people, and I was maybe accused of it, knowing a lot more than I actually did when I started out. Just like anything, you have to learn by trial and error, and you get knocked around a little bit. But definitely there's a lot of guides in Arizona, and there's all ranges of quality. There's all ranges of the amount of time guys spend, and success and efficiency and effectiveness that each guide has. Definitely some are better than others, and some are better at certain animals than others, and great at elk and not so good at Coots Deer, and or great at sheep and not so good at elk, or vice versa. And then there's some guys that are great at everything.
So something I think about a lot actually is how much I get to look forward to hunting, since moving down to Austin, I'm living in a city now, and that's going to be the first time I've ever done that. But I'm just wondering, does doing this so often and watching clients succeed and stuff, has that ever in your career diluted your passion for being out there?
No, I think one of the things that I've been able to do is I fish all summer. I've got a place between Glenwood Springs and Aspen, Colorado, which is actually where I'm at now, and I spend much of the summer here chasing. I like to fish for trout in moving water. I have several rafts and boats that I like to row and put people on fish, and I also like to fish myself. So I get a break, and then I do elk basically September and October. Then I shift focus kind of to mule deer in November. Then December and January is made up of Coots Deer. Then there's somewhat of a break. February and March don't do a whole lot regards to hunting and fishing. And then I start back up with turkeys April and May. And then I'm in the period that I'm at now where we just finished turkey season, and I'm moving into fishing season. So my point of the whole thing is I'm able to move from season to season, and because I don't do elk 12 months out of the year, or sheep 12 months out of the year, or turkey 12 months out of the year, being able to move from animal to animal and season to season allows me to kind of refresh and refresh my batteries, so to speak. And then being able to fish in the summer allows me a little bit to get away from all of the hunting stuff, even though I'm doing at least 8 to 10 episodes a month on my podcast, mostly talking about hunting. It's something I love, just like you do. So it's real easy to do what I do. If I hunted elk 12 months out of the year for 20 years, I'm sure I'd get sick of it. But since they only bugle 30, 40 days out of the year, it's easy to be into it for that time period and then move on. And same with turkeys, they gobble for about 30 days and then you can move on from there.
Yeah, I think variation definitely helps keep your interest up.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's not something you're passionate about, don't do it. I'm a huge proponent of do things that you like to do. And if you don't enjoy it anymore, find something else you do. I mean, I like to ski in the winter. I like to I love real estate. I love looking and finding deals, hunting deals down, and so I stay pretty busy.
Yeah, that sounds like it. So with your podcast, what inspired you to start that up? Why did you want to start having really cool conversations with people around the outdoor industry?
So in January of 2015, I had gotten back from Coots Deer hunting, and I'm friends with Stephen Ranella and Giannis Patelis. Giannis is the producer of the Meat Eater podcast and the Meat Eater TV show. Giannis actually for 5 years, was over here in Vail, Colorado, was my wife and I's fly fishing guide. We'd fish with him once or twice a week. And he actually came down and guided for Dar and I for elk for a couple seasons in Arizona, and then came down and guided for us for Coots Deer in Mexico. And to make a long story short, in January of 2015, I just got back from the Coots Deer hunt, and Giannis and Steve Ranella had sent me a pilot episode of the Meat Eater podcast, and they said, "Man, Jay, you ought to do a podcast, a Western hunting podcast." So I credit those guys with, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I listened to their pilot episode and thought, yeah, this might be a great extension of my outfitting business and the passions that I have, and give me an opportunity to try and portray hunting and fishing in a positive light. So, I mean, within 2 weeks, I had my first. They told me what equipment to buy, and I had my first episode going. And then very shortly after that, I got a call from GoHunt.com, who is still my title sponsor of the podcast. And I thought, wow, I didn't even think of monetizing the podcast. Didn't even think that was possible. That's not even why I did it. And then very shortly, had other companies come on. I've had pretty much the same companies sponsor the podcast now. This last February had my 4-year anniversary. Like I said, I'm 567 episodes in, and try and do 2 a week. And we're just talking hunting and fishing. It's probably 80-90% hunting. I should probably do more fishing. I get lots of requests for more fishing, and it's fun. Like as you know, getting to talk about something you're passionate about is fun. And I have a lot that I need to give back for hunting and fishing. So if I can shed light on any part of the outdoors, hunting and fishing, and portray it in a positive light, that's what I'm going to try and do. Try and help people as much as I can. Some people would think my podcast is a little bit boring. It's very detail oriented. It's very educational, very informational. Try and get good information out of my guests. It's not an entertaining podcast. I'm not a very funny guy. My wife says I have a radio voice, we're doing a video here. I very rarely do video podcasts. She teases me and says I have a radio face and need to stay away from the video stuff. But I've had a lot of fun doing it. It's amazing. I think one of the things in starting out so early, when I first started, really nobody even knew what a podcast was. Now all of the great podcasts coming online every day, hunting and fishing, business, all sorts of, every topic, every category out there. I think it's phenomenal because I think people can learn and listen to people that they like to listen to. You can listen on your mobile device. You can listen to half an episode or wherever and listen to another completely, a real estate podcast and go back to the hunting one, so you can listen on your own time. And I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, well, I definitely thought it'd be a great idea to talk to someone that was nearly 600 episodes deep in a podcast of something that I really enjoy too. So thank you for jumping on again.
Yeah, no sweat.
So what advice would you give to someone? This is my 15th episode. I've already talked to some really great people. What advice would you give to someone how to get 500 episodes deep? How do you continue to find things that you're passionate or people to talk to that are really interesting?
Well, the first bit of advice I would give you is you got to do what you enjoy, not what you think the listeners want to hear. Yeah. Too many people are chasing what people want to hear, and they just burn out. If you're going to be successful in podcasting, you've got to do what you want to talk about, what you want to hear. You got to ask the questions and have the people on that interest you. If you're not interested and engaged in the podcast, then it's going to fall on its face. So I would not try and be the entertaining, unless you're a super funny guy and super entertaining and you can carry on the whole show. I would try and dictate and let your person you're interviewing, let them run, give them opportunity to shine. Try and shy away from being too popular, too fancy, too I always tell my people on my podcast, you're never going to get fancy. You're never going to get popular. I don't want either one of those.
Yeah.
Granted, 567 episodes, 25 million downloads, notoriety, recognition, that comes with it. You have to be able to embrace that, but don't chase that. I see some people in all sorts of different avenues of social media and podcasts. They're trying to be famous. They're trying to be fancy. They're not being themselves. So you have to be genuine. You have to be yourself. And in my opinion, the podcasts that are going to be successful are the ones that are going to be around for a long time and have longevity, are those that are genuine, those that focus on information, and those that focus on education. I think someone can be only so funny so long, and trying to chase and be popular and be fancy, and I just don't see it lasting.
Yeah. No, I found it so interesting that I could have conversations with things that and interview people that I don't, over subjects I have no idea about. I'm not an elk hunter. I grew up in Oklahoma, but it's something I really aspire to do. And
Sure.
So it's so easy to bring, people that are professional guides, that are professional, like you say, Steve,
Absolutely.
a world-class caller, and I can bring them in. I can have that one-on-one conversation with them, and then I can share that with people. And if people like it, cool. And if they don't, that's fine. I still get to have weekly conversations with people, and I'm getting better at what I love to do.
As long as they're bringing you value, meaning your questions and your learning, and I can already tell you're good at interviewing and what have you, you're going to do fine. And as long as you're engaged in it and you're genuine and you're self-aware of what's going on and with yourself and your passions, then you be the judge if it's successful or not. I wouldn't pay much attention to reviews or negative criticism or anything like that, because no matter what you do, there's always going to be people that one, they don't like you for whatever reason. They don't like the way you look, they don't like the way you talk, they don't, whatever it is. So I've learned a long time ago, you just got to be yourself, you got to be genuine, and you'll do fine.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So what gets you excited about this upcoming season? I talked to my buddy Ian, and it's funny. It's so funny to see this from two people. One that I was I lived right next to in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I had no idea there would be a elk hunting guide in Stillwater. But he was saying that you guys have been having some really tough drought years, and that had hurt some of the bulls' antler growth. And so that's just something I wanted to throw in there. But I wanted to ask you what you were excited about this upcoming fall.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. In Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, all across the Southwest, we've been in terrible droughts. Last season in Arizona and Colorado, for that matter, New Mexico, all across the Southwest, our antlers, whether it be Coots Deer, Mule Deer, elk, were down. I like it when the elk bugle hard. I like it when the elk grow the biggest antlers they can. I like it when the Coots Deer are big. I like it when Mule Deer are big. And I like it when they rut hard. And most people are going to tell you the same thing. So when we have wet years like what we've had, and the deer go into their growing season right now, when their body condition is in good shape, they're going to grow big antlers, and they're going to be giant bucks and bulls and rams running around the countryside. And then they also are fleshy and are feeling good, and typically the elk bugle their guts out. The deer right on time chasing does. So on wet years, for us in the Southwest, we're super excited. I'm super excited. I'm sitting on a bunch of points for deer in Arizona. Not quite max, but I'd love to draw a deer tag on the Arizona Strip this year. I'd love one chance to hunt the Arizona Strip and chase a giant deer. From an elk perspective, I think there's going to be some phenomenal bulls shot in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado this year, because we've had so much moisture. I think antler growth is going to be at maximum potential. I think they're going to rut their guts out, and it's one of those things. As a hunter, drought years are tough because we know the antlers are brittle. They tend to fight and break up, and then you have a bull bugling and he comes in 30 yards and all of a sudden half his rack's gone. And for some people, they're like, man, if any bull comes in, I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah.
I've been spoiled being around elk for, since 1990s, got my guide's license in 97, 22 years. of seeing the best elk hunting in the world right in front of my face. So I've shot bulls over 400 inches with my bow and with my rifle. I've seen some of the best elk hunting that anyone's ever seen because of the time frame and the proximity, where I live in Arizona. So I'm a bit spoiled. I'll tell everybody I'm spoiled. I've seen more elk fighting, more elk rutting, bugling, cow calling. I've been able to experience the best of the best. So I'm looking forward to a great elk rut. Last year on the '06 ranch, it was so dry, 80-year drought. We actually didn't have any water to irrigate in any of our irrigation pivots. We have 3 agricultural areas on the ranch. It's a 50,000 acre ranch and just a beautiful property. This year we're already irrigating. I feel like our bulls last year were surprisingly big on a drought year, and I think they have a chance to be even bigger. In Arizona, the bulls are going to be as good as they get. And that's going to be the case all across the Southwest. So we, as hunters, have a lot to be excited for this coming season for sure.
So I think on my over-the-counter hunt, I think I'm going to look around Colorado Springs. So do you know if they got a lot of rain up there too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, most areas in Colorado are anywhere from 110 to 140, 145% of normal. I'm here in Colorado right now. It actually snowed today.
Oh, wow.
And we have 5 days ahead of us of on the actual, when you look at weather.com, there's, snowflakes. It snowed, I think, 1.5 inches in Aspen this morning. So Colorado Springs is, the '06 ranch is not too far from Colorado Springs, and they've gotten great moisture. So I think it's going to be a phenomenal season, a phenomenal year, and it's a good time to come out and try your hand at a over-the-counter Colorado elk hunt.
That sounds great. I'm really excited for it. That's funny that you're up around Aspen. I ski in Aspen just about every winter, and I love it up there. It's some beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, I get the Premier Pass. I buy the Premier Pass so I can ski Snowmass Aspen and Aspen Highlands, and I love skiing as well. Spent some time up here this winter, not as much as I wanted to, but certainly enjoy getting out. Just like most of my fly fishing, since I live here in the summer, I can cherry pick those days, and when I spend quite a bit of time here in the winter as well, I can go out on those great days. And the snow this last year was just phenomenal. Had some great skiing. So when you come out this next year, we'll have to go ski some runs together.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I ski Snowmass. That's where we ski, and
yeah.
Oh gosh, the snow this year was incredible.
Yeah,
and it was I think it was my 3rd year skiing, so it was a great year to go try some blacks and get tore up a little bit.
Yeah, Snowmass is one of those areas that there's no lift lines. They have high-speed quads. You can get around the mountain very well. There's definitely some expert terrain and stuff way over my head, but there's some great, beautiful, just good blue cruising runs where you can go fast and make good turns. And skiing's something I'm passionate about as well. And feeling and making those good turns, it's just an amazing feeling for sure.
So I was up in Colorado. It was in late March, and I was fishing at the Dream Stream. I was wondering if you ever done any fishing at the Dream Stream.
I haven't actually fished the Dream Stream. You're talking, I believe, about the Platte River. Mm-hmm. I believe it's the South Platte. I haven't done any fishing there. I've basically fished in the Roaring Fork Valley, the Roaring Fork River, the Colorado, the Eagle. That's where I've spent a bunch of time, done a bunch of fishing in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, all over Yellowstone, all over that area. And then every year I'll go a couple times, do the Gunnison Gorge, do the Gunnison for the salmon fly hatch, not too far from my house here. And then, the Green River below the Flaming Gorge Reservoir in Utah and Wyoming right there is only right at 4 hours from my house. So I try and go and catch as much good summer fishing as I can there. But I have not fished the Dream Stream. It's a wading fishery where you got to wade. It's a tailwater fishery, which is phenomenal, giant fish, great hatches. Mm-hmm. The more I love fishing moving water, and my preference is to fish out of a boat. And I like, to be honest with you, I've gotten into rowing, and I bought my first boat in 2010, and I enjoy rowing and putting people on fish as much as I like fishing, but I still do quite a bit of walk and wade fishing. The property that we live in here, there's 300 acres, and we have access to about 6 miles of water that's just phenomenal trout fishing. So yeah, it's Colorado's a great place to be, for hiking and fishing and hunting, and then of course the skiing for sure.
Yeah, it seems to have it all. So that was most of the questions I had here, but I have one more I just wanted to end with. You can answer it as complex or as barbaric as you want, but I just like to ask before I leave every interview. It's just why do you hunt? Why do you continue to hunt?
I hunt because it's something that, as a little kid, I was one of those that my grandma got me Field and Stream magazine when I was in kindergarten. I really didn't have anybody to take me hunting until I was about 15 or 16 years old. So I was always one of those kids that dreamed about it. And I'm as passionate today as I've ever been about every aspect of hunting. I was fortunate to go on 2 Dall sheep hunts last summer, go to Alaska and go to the Northwest Territories. There's just something about the adventure of hunting, the challenge of hunting. I love bulls bugling in your face. I love turkeys blowing your hat off, gobbling. And I love the challenge of trying to glass up bighorn sheep and deer. But for me, it's all about the sport. To me, it's all about, a lot of guys like to hunt because of the meat, and all that's great, and I like the meat as well. But to me, it's the excitement. It's the strategy. It's all of the things that make up a hunt, trying to figure out the most efficient way to get in close and harvest an animal. To me, always when you actually kill something, everyone's super elated. To me, it's almost a letdown because of all the stuff that leads up to it, the preparation, the strategy, trying to figure out the best and most efficient way to kill something. And then once you kill it, it's almost a letdown for me. But that's what keeps me going. I love all of the, how to do things rather than just, drive down the road and jump out and shoot something. I love all of the strategy of how to get in close and how to do it, the most efficient and effective way.
That's awesome. So if someone wants to keep up with you, if a listener wants to check you out, your guide service, your podcast, where's the best place to do that?
So Instagram, it's at J Scott Outdoors on Instagram. There's a lot of videos and photos on there, and links to my podcast. If they want to go to the podcast, you can search anywhere that podcasts are found. iTunes is probably the number one provider, but J Scott Outdoors, Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast. You can also go to my website, jscottoutdoors.com. But, anymore, Instagram is so good, at J Scott Outdoors, where it's a free platform where you can go on and post photos and videos of things that you love, and you can go and check out other people's photos and videos of things they love. I mean, we live in such an amazing time where I hear people complaining about Facebook and Instagram and this and that. It's like, man, we've never lived in a time where we can go share photos and share our passions with our buddies and fellow hunters and fishermen. Mm-hmm. So, I would say go on Instagram at J Scott Outdoors, and yeah, if I can ever help anybody, definitely let me know. Send me an email, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. I'm happy to help anybody and everybody. All I want to do is try and further the sport of hunting and fishing. I don't like pushing my passions on anyone, but if someone wants to learn more, I try and do everything I can to help them learn more about whatever it is they're seeking. So I really appreciate you having me on. I wish you the best of success. 15 episodes in, you just have basically a blank slate in front of you, and you can do anything you want with this podcast. And that's the beauty, is it's your podcast, so you get to do it however you want. Stay genuine and true to yourself, and do it because you love it, and success will follow.
Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate that. I know you brought me just in an hour, a ton of value. And I look forward to not only talking with you again on the podcast sometime, I hope soon, but also continuing to listen to your podcast.
Well, I appreciate the support, and I've got a friend that's a big OSU cowboy. He's older than both you and me, but his name's EJ Pfister. He was on the golf team there. Was an unbelievable golfer, and he teaches there at Oak Tree National there in Edmond, or I think it's Edmond, Oklahoma. But he's a huge cowboy, and so I'll tell him I met another fellow cowboy.
Awesome. That works for me. Well, I appreciate it, and I will talk to you again another time.
Anytime, buddy. I'm happy to come on. I appreciate you taking your time to ask me to come on, and just